All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is Wednesday. It's Hump Day. Always happy on Wednesdays, and this is no exception. Getting through the week is, I guess, an accomplishment of sorts, and so I'll take it. I absolutely will. After yesterday's program, which, by the way, I really do recommend. I pretty much recommend all my programs. Of course, I like them because I do them, although I don't always like them. Sometimes I'm kind of disappointed in the work I do. But I thought yesterday's was particularly good, not because of what I had to say, but because we had just such a great guest. Adnan Stumo from Code Pink was just outstanding, touched on a lot of very important issues. And, you know, I share his values to a significant degree. I also really admire him. So for me, it was a really enjoyable and I thought important program to do. I would note there were some little tech issues. I try to avoid those as much as possible. Sometimes with guests, it's a little more problematic, but I did go back over the video, did a lot of editing, and I think it's pretty good now, the one that's up. So I took out the live one, didn't lose any content whatsoever, just cleaned up some of the audio. So let me know what you think if you get a chance. Did get some commentary from viewers, from listeners who really had kind words to say. Now, if you're watching Halitics and you haven't yet subscribed, please do. Please, we really need your subscription. I hear this from folks all the time when they say is, hey, it helps with the algorithm, and that's just, there's just no question. I think just a comment, just a like, and certainly a new subscription helps me get the word out. So that's what I'm hoping that you'll do. If you like what we're doing, and hey, even if you don't, I don't care whether you like it or not. If you click that like button, I mean, of course I want you to like it, but you know, that's what's most important in the end for me is getting the likes. But obviously, if you don't like it, you're not going to click like. So I hope you do like, hope you do click like. And finally, do join us on Facebook. We have such a good back and forth there. And some folks who have very, very different views from mine post quite prolifically. So we get a lot of ferment, a lot of intellectual back and forth at Halitics. I'm sure today's program will excite some folks who don't share my views. And this is, again, not to be viewed. And I know a lot of people say, oh, well, you're endorsing Trump and you like Trump and you're a Trump pansy. I've been called that, a Trump pansy. How about that one? Mainly because I criticize Democrats, not because I've had kind or fond words for the president. But I will note that when at least it comes to war, I don't think there's any question he's better, right? And I don't like to use the word better when someone's bad. I use the word not as bad, right? Less worse, less bad than the alternative. But in this case, so I would say when it comes to social programs, when it comes to, for example, safety net issues, I would say the Democrats are less bad than the Republicans, that Harris would have been a less bad president than Trump. Not that she would have been good because, or better even, but just not quite as awful. That's how I would characterize the Democrats when it comes to many domestic programs. They're not quite as awful, but they're still bad. They may not be quite as awful as Republicans. But I think when it comes to war and peace issues, I mean, Trump is better. Is he good? I've talked to Medea about this. We had Adnan on yesterday from Code Pink. And, you know, we were talking about how Trump is, you know, clearly in certain ways, he seems to be superior to what we've got from Democrats. And that was one of the reasons, certainly when it comes to you, certainly some of the rhetoric. Now, the appointments have been really bad. But even there, even with Tulsi, and we'll talk about Tulsi a little bit later, she did get through the committee. She got the committee recommendation, and it looks like, therefore, she will get the backing of the full Senate, which is, I think, a really good thing. So there have been some decent options. Certainly, she's better. Tulsi's clearly by an order of magnitude better than Avril Haines, who was the Harris-Biden defense. Is that what it is? Director of National Intelligence, right? Director of National Intelligence. All right, so the big news after the program I did yesterday, Trump and Netanyahu have a press conference, and Trump says, hey, we're going to take over the Gaza Strip. And you can see the AP headline there, rejected by allies and adversaries alike. I call it crazy like a fox, or just effing just plain nuts. And the reason I got the crazy like a fox is because if you actually look at the, and I will go through this, the Haaretz article, and you go through what Trump said, yeah, some of it seems to actually, at least to me, make sense and may be, in the end, good, or at least, could lead to better outcomes, whether by design or not. So if it's by design, yeah, there's the crazy like a fox thing. And if it's just by luck, yeah, then nuts that somehow worked out. Haaretz has been the most critical by far, Israeli media, towards Netanyahu, and rightly so. He's a monster. So if they think this plan could lead to a better outcome for Palestinians, wow, that's really, really good. And there you can see at the bottom right of my thumbnail, Trump traps Netanyahu, and they get into it in great detail. I think what Haaretz writes is plausible. I don't think it's crazy. I don't think what Haaretz writes is crazy. I don't think the idea that this fantastical, nonsensical scheme announced by Trump that the U.S. will take ownership of the Gaza Strip, I don't think that necessarily will lead to the terrible outcome that some fear. So and when you look at what we were seeing in Gaza and what we're seeing now, with more bodies, the death count continuing to spike even after the killing by Israel has stopped, just because we're seeing more and more dead bodies from the rubble, then I don't think anyone who supported Harris Biden is in a position really to be too harshly critical of Trump. I mean, he did inherit a genocide that was in process, and so far, the ceasefire that his guy, Witkoff, was able to generate is holding. Here's the presser yesterday with some commentary from Trump.
Mr. President, given what you've said about Gaza, did the U.S. send troops to help secure the security vacuum?
As far as Gaza is concerned, we'll do what is necessary. If it's necessary, we'll do that.
I want to stop it right there because I was really, really interested in that response. The question, I'll just repeat it. Obviously, you heard it, but just to repeat it. The question is, hey, are you going to send troops? Will you send U.S. troops into Gaza to maintain the peace? And Trump's like, yeah, we'll do whatever we need to do. We'll do whatever is necessary. That's a remarkable change. Think about that. Compare that to Harris Biden. Send U.S. troops? Are you kidding me? We're giving Israel every single thing they want. We're not going to send in any troops to try to stop them from killing Palestinians. Compare that to what Trump just said. Yeah, we'll do. We want the killing to stop. We don't want any more killing. That's a remarkable policy change. And I think you need to give him credit for that. I'm totally, folks will say, oh, well, how can you do this? You've changed. You're different than you used to be. And my response is, I said from the beginning that the U.S. should be sending in troops to protect Palestinians. I said that's what the U.S. government should do. Now, this is not going to be some encomium. Let me be very, very clear. This is not an encomium, today's program, to Trump. I think there's some things I'm really concerned about, of course. But, man, yeah, we're not ruling it out. I mean, look at that threat. That's really a shot across Bibi's bow, isn't it? We're not giving you free rein. Yeah, we'll send in troops if that's what it takes. All right, let's continue.
Take over that piece, and we're going to develop it, create thousands and thousands of jobs, and it'll be something that the entire Middle East can be very proud of.
All right, it sounds blue. I mean, come on. Is that really? No, I don't. We're going to take over. We're going to take ownership of this strip of land far. Now this goes to Trump. He's a real estate developer. He sees, profit. And that's really bad. This is not what we want. I don't want empire. And apparently Trump is talking about the U.S. taking control. He is saying that. Is there a plausible explanation that could justify such an announcement? Well, look at who's standing to his right in that image. It's to your left, but to Trump's right. That's somebody who will absolutely not agree to any kind of Palestinian control over Gaza, right? Now, I think Trump should say, and he did say, we're going to send in troops to maintain peace. But, in the end, the leverage should be to Netanyahu, no, there's going to be Palestinians living there, and you're not going to be able to go in and clear it out and kill people. I'd like him to say that, but this could well be a step in that direction. And there's more. Let's continue.
Everybody feels that continuing the same process that's gone on forever, over and over again, and then it starts, and then the killing starts. And
isn't he absolutely right? This is what we've seen for 75 years. Exactly. Yes, the killing starts. The clearing out continues. So Trump is spot on there. He actually is. Now, Adnan and I discussed the answer, which is a one-state solution, but Netanyahu if Trump tried to leverage that or jam it down Netanyahu's throat, A, it would never happen, and B, if it did, he would be out of power tomorrow. Meaning Netanyahu. He would be out of power tomorrow if he talked about a one-state solution, even if he talked about a two-state solution. So Trump's saying, hey, okay, well, we're not going to get a one-state solution, or else it means like the end of Israel. And I don't think Trump, and I think he recognizes politically he can't do that. And we're not going to get a two-state solution. So you know what? The solution is U.S. takes over. What do you think? 240-242-5646. 240-242-5646.
all of the other problems start, and you end up in the same place, and we don't want to see that happen.
You are talking tonight about the United States taking over a sovereign territory. What authority would allow you to do that? Are you talking about a permanent occupation there?
I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. And everybody I've spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States.
This is just his bombast, right? Nobody loves the idea. They may be saying, oh, yeah, but that's smart. If you're dealing with Trump, you should say, yeah, it's a good idea, even if you think it's a terrible idea, because he'll keep listening to you. And then you can, around the edges, say, well, it's a great idea, but, maybe we might want to fine tune it in this little area. But if you say, oh, it's crazy, you're out of your mind, this could never happen, then he's going to kick you out of the room. You get no say, you get no leverage. So I actually think those who are around him are making the right call to say it's, and that's what Netanyahu is trying to do, because Netanyahu doesn't want the U.S. owning. He probably is thinking down the road, I'll be able to take over, they'll get sick of it, they'll give it back. Is that what Trump, his long-term plan is, his goal is to give this to Israel? That's certainly what Israel wants. It's certainly what Netanyahu wants. I don't think you can come to that conclusion that this is, in the end, a plan by Trump to turn over Gaza to Israel. I don't think that's where we are right now. Now, if I could be wrong, and maybe that is what he's planning on, or that's where this is heading, that would be horrible. Obviously, terrible, terrible result. That's not what he says, though, throughout this conference, and we'll hear a lot more from Trump.
Owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent in a really magnificent area that nobody would know. Nobody can look because all they see is death and destruction and rubble.
He has a different idea.
All right, so I'm going to stop it. I don't really want to hear what Netanyahu has to say, so we'll jump through that. But I want to contrast also the way Trump discusses Gaza. You know, he doesn't bring up, he talks about how awful it is. He sees the rubble, the destruction. He doesn't blame Israel for it, which he should, of course. I don't know what he thinks. He's the guy who says art of the deal. I always thought it was a load of crap. He has not impressed me as a business person. Particularly, I mean, he was born on third base, and he's still on third base, I suppose. You know, his whole claim he's a billionaire, apparently he's not. He's had a lot of business setbacks. So his business acumen is not nearly what he claims it to be. But all that said, he is trying to thread a needle here, and so far seems to be succeeding. I would note he was dealt such an awful hand by Harris Biden. He was put in such a tough spot. So I give him credit for coming up with an idea that apparently will allow the ceasefire to continue, at least for now. No, this is always subject to revision. By the way, again, 240-5646. Not seeing any chat in there. I don't know whether we've lost my good buddy Ari. Maybe he's working right now. I'm not really clear. He was always the first one to chat. So sorry to lose you there, Ari. I want to get but I'll keep an eye on it to see if you come back. I want to play more because this is the question about why do this, right? And I mean, we all are suspicious. This is so that Jared Kushner, he can get his son-in-law a really great job, like running some enormous resort, which he says it's a great area. It's so pretty. It is on the Mediterranean, I suppose. But, again, Trump describes it. It is rubble. You can't live there. It's uninhabitable. Israel turned it into a moonscape. And, again, different than the way Harris Biden would discuss this, which especially Harris, I don't remember Biden much, Harris, and he doesn't remember at all. Harris saying, well, let's be clear here. This all started when Israel was attacked brutally. Trump doesn't get in all that crap. He's just like, look at, this is a disaster. This is horrible. This is uninhabitable. And he's right. And it's the criticism of Israel is implied, but it's not hidden. It's clear he's saying this is what Israel did.
Would Palestinians have the right to return to Gaza if they left while the rebuilding was happening?
It would be my hope that we could do something really nice, really good, where they wouldn't want to return. Why would they want to return? The place has been hell. It's been one of the meanest, toughest places on earth. And right now, I've seen every picture from every angle, better than if I were there. And nobody can live there. You can't live there. So if we can build them through massive amounts of money supplied by other people, very rich nations, and they're willing to supply it. If we can build something for them in one of the countries, and it could be Jordan, and it could be Egypt, it could be other countries, and you could build 4 or 5 or 6 areas. It doesn't have to be one area, but you take certain areas and you build really good quality housing, like a beautiful town, like someplace where they can live and not die. Because Gaza
Isn't that amazing what he just said, where they can live, not die? I don't remember. I remember Harris, she did say several times, oh, it's awful there and we have to stop it and they're suffering. But I think the language Trump uses is starker and more accurate. And he is saying build it for them. First he said, well, we hope they wouldn't want to return. That's a stop, by the way. Now, it may be true that that's what he hopes, and he doesn't want Gaza to be Palestinian. That's quite possible. But it's also something he has to say for Bibi's sake. And part of the reason he's going to give Bibi some bones here is because Bibi's got to go back to the Knesset, and he's got to go back and talk to Smotrich and the other extreme right-wing monsters who are even more evil, right? Because basically Bibi's amoral. He's just in it for himself. He's not some not complete well, he is a sociopath, but I don't think he's quite he's not delusional. I think those right-wingers really, truly believe in Israel that, these areas are God's will, these religious fanatics. God's will is that Israel occupy them. So Trump has to sort of say, oh, well, we hope they won't return. We're going to do the best we can for them. Now, before I get too positive about Trump, I want to make some more points. There's a lot that Trump's done that scares the hell out of me when it comes to foreign policy, putting aside domestic. So people like Elise Stefanik, Huckabee, they're scary. These are not good people. These are not caring people. These are not people who are in the business of trying to help others. So they're the religious, at least Huckabee's a religious fanatic, referring, there's no such thing as Palestinians. That's what he said. Stefanik, I don't know her thing, but her language, her rhetoric has been just so awful when it comes to the Palestinian people. So they're bad choices. On the other hand, who did Trump choose to negotiate with Israel? He didn't pick Huckabee. He didn't pick Stefanik. He's like, Stefanik, fine, you can go to the UN and screw things up there. I really don't care. But when it comes to getting a deal done with Israel and Hamas, I'm going with my guy Witkoff. So, you could look at it and say, okay, Stefanik and Huckabee are sops to AIPAC, right? He's got AIPAC support. He wants to keep it. But in the end, what he wants really is to end the killing in the Middle East and to come up with some kind of long-term solution. And so he picks this guy Witkoff, who's not, fine. You got your Sabbath, Bibi. I don't really give a crap. You're the client state. I'm here. We're giving you bombs. We're giving you guns. We're giving you bullets. You're going to meet with me now. That's the right way to do it.
That they're going to end up dying. The same thing's going to happen again. It's happened over and over again, and it's going to happen again as sure as you're standing there.
All right, and then we'll just play one more clip. So he's saying, hey, we got to come up with some other solution. We can't keep doing the wrong thing. And he's right. So I have a lot here. I've got stuff from Haaretz I wanted to show you, but I actually want to just play one more clip here. I'll see if I can get this, where he talks about the Palestinian, where Trump talks about the Palestinians. So we'll just keep going through this because, he is the president. He's the one who's driving this bus. So I think it makes sense to hear from Trump. So here we go.
Well, I said it, and he said it very well. It's a campaign of pressure to see if we can get something done. He doesn't want to do what some people think will automatically happen because they're very difficult people to deal with, as you know. But if we could solve this problem without warfare, without all of the things that you've been witnessing over the last number of years, it would be, I think it would be a tremendous thing.
All right, so so that is really big. We can solve this without warfare. That'd be a really good thing. Now, think about what Harris said. Oh, we've got to get a deal done. We've got to get a deal done. But did she? No. Did she put any pressure on Israel? No. Trump just said we have to put pressure on Israel. And he did. The only pressure, and I was so astonished when I heard from, well, I shouldn't say I was astonished. Well, it wasn't. But I've heard loyal Dems, party functionaries say things like, oh, it was Biden's deal. Biden negotiated it. How dare Trump take any credit for it? Biden's way of arm twisting Trump was, oh, please sign the deal. Here's some more bombs. Oh, please sign the deal. Here's some more missiles. Oh, please sign the deal. Stop killing Palestinians. Here's Iron Shield, Iron Dome. Here's more Iron Dome software so you don't ever have to worry about Israel being targeted or hit. That's not how you get a deal done. And the answer is he didn't want a deal. Biden didn't want a deal. Here's more from Trump. And this will be the last clip, I promise. But It really goes to that whole question. This is why I want to play this. Will Palestinians have a right to return? Because that's crucial. Otherwise, it is ethnic cleansing. Otherwise, it is. Now, I don't want to say, if you tell the Palestinian people, well, look, Israel has rendered your homeland completely uninhabitable, which is true, which Israel did do with the full, unwavering commitment to support Israel of the Harris-Biden administration. So Israel did that with the United States' help. Trump says, hey, you can't live there now. We got to find someplace else for you. I accept that. I think a lot of people agree with that. But then where do they go? So he's saying Jordan, Egypt, will they be able to come back? Now, it's really going to be hard. I mean, I don't know whether you could, I don't know what you can do because it is all rubble. And it will take years to rebuild. And you look at the experience of countries, of people who lived in war zones like Germany after World War II, like the cities in Japan that were bombed. And you couldn't live there, right? You couldn't live in Dresden. I mean, they had to live in refugee camps. They had to be in different places. I don't know what, I don't know enough to say what the right answer is, but I do know that ultimately, if those folks should have Gaza and they should be part of Israel in the end. Here's what Trump has to say.
But more importantly than that is the people that have been absolutely destroyed that live there now can live in peace in a much better situation because they're living in hell. And those people will now be able to live in peace. We'll make sure.
All right, so let me stop that. Again, there's no mention of Israelis. He doesn't say, oh, those poor Israelis who got attacked, we have to make sure they're protected. No, he's saying the Gazans who are living through hell, we have to make sure they're protected and they live in peace.
It's done world class. It'll be wonderful for the people. Palestinians, mostly we're talking about.
So listen to that. Who's it for? The Palestinians mostly. Now, he might have said mostly. I'll just finish. There's a couple more seconds. But why did he say mostly instead of just for the Palestinians? Well, he's got that Israeli guy next to him. And if he says it's for the Palestinians, he would make it even harder for Netanyahu to sell the deal. All right, so that was it. I thought there was a little more, but I had it all. All right, so again, I may be totally off base here. I may be just grasping at straws. It's just my naive hope that somehow better times are in store for the people of Palestine, whose lives have been so just, not just disrupted, but just so for so many people completely ruined by the Harris-Biden administration in Israel. So I may just be out of my mind. I hope I'm not. I mean, all I can do is give you my analysis of what I'm seeing. And I just want to give just a little bit here because Haaretz did a real nice job, I thought. Or this guy. Now, see, Haaretz has all these editorials. So this editorial, let me see if I can get you this. This is by Alon, right? So it's not Alan. I mean, because if you live in Israel, if you're like a Sabra, which is someone who's born there, if you're a Sabra, then you don't get to just be Alan. I mean, there are Allens, but if you're in the, in that community, then you're Alon, right? I mean, they won't go. But I remember when I was in Monterey and I talked to, they used to have this Irish music festival, and all the musicians and stuff were named Seamus and Finnegan and all this. And I'm like, there are John Smiths in Ireland, but I guess there are more Seamuses and Finnegan. So this is Alon, not Alan Pincus, because he's Israeli. Now, if this was the United States, he'd be Alan, but okay, you're Alon, whatever. I don't care. I mean, that's fine. You should name whatever. My name's Harold, which is an English name, and I'm sure as hell ain't English, so whatever. But or is it English? I think it's even Scandinavian, because wasn't there a Harold, some sort of a Viking person named Harold? I don't know. So from Haaretz, this is Alon Pincus. Impractical, incomprehensible, illegal. Trump traps Netanyahu. Does he really? Did he trap him? Well, it's not so far-fetched. So So he has 3 takeaways, does Elon Pincus. They're kind of like mine, but maybe I should say, to be more honest, mine are more like his, because I certainly read his article, read his piece pretty closely. But just to go through this, here are his 3 takeaways. First, and this is the most important, when I read this, I was like, wow, gosh, I hope this is true. Until the U.S. takes over Gaza, the ceasefire and stage 2 of the hostage release agreement need to continue. That's, of course, what we want, right? The last thing we want is Israel to, start moving their tanks back in, start shooting again, start killing again. So Elon is saying, hey, Trump said, we're taking it over. If you go in there, Israel, you're declaring war on the U.S. because it's going to be us who are going to take ownership. Good luck with that one. And Trump did say, hey, we'll send in troops if we have to. Second, what Pincus says is the U.S. is applying maximum pressure on Iran to compel it to engage in a new nuclear deal. Now, I wasn't aware of this, but it's relevant because, of course, Israel wants to destroy Iran, wants to crush Iran. And as long, again, as there's negotiations with Iran, Israel really can't. Because remember, in the end, as much as the Israeli tail wagged the Harris Biden dog, ultimately the U.S. holds all the power, all the cards. In fact, you even heard, beyond the military, control, because it's our weapons that Israel uses. But it's also the economy, which is what Adnan was saying yesterday, is that the Israeli economy, as strong as it is, and it's pretty strong, is because of all the aid we provide. I don't think we should give them that aid. I don't care if their economy goes into the toilet, particularly. But, I don't want destabilization, because economic destabilization is problematic. And I don't want particularly Israelis to suffer, but I don't want their economy. A weaker Israel is actually better in a lot of ways. So Israel is totally dependent on the United States. It's just we don't act like it because of AIPAC, because of the power that a lot of, influential billionaires have who support the current Israeli government. So what Elon Pincus is saying is, hey, it's not just the Israel-Hamas where Trump got over on Bibi, because now Bibi can't resume the genocide, the Holocaust. But also, hey, looks like we're not even going to have, Israel can't even go after Iran. Let's hope that's true. Again, this seems to me, this is an awfully full analysis, but let's hope it's accurate. So no war in Iran for the time being. There you go. That's second. I'll just repeat that. And then third, what happened to the Saudi-Israeli normalization process? So I think Israel does want to deal with the Saudis. They don't have any interest, I think, in, fighting with Saudi Arabia. The Saudis are just as corrupt and just as murderous as Israel. So they don't, and the Saudis don't have any, I think, love for the Palestinian people. So yeah, Israel would just as soon not be worrying about Saudi Arabia. And right now, Trump's like, that's not a big deal to me. So in all those ways, according to Elon Pincus, and it's plausible to me, I'm not an expert, I find this plausible. Trump, he did trap Netanyahu. Netanyahu can't really do anything about it. And Pincus wraps it all up in this nice little bow. And again, this is not necessarily how other people view this, and it may not happen the way I'm describing it. And there are a lot of Zionists who have Trump's ear. I thought what Adnan said yesterday, and if you missed that program, I do urge you to try to get a chance to watch it. It'd be easier to watch if you were watching. Maybe the tech issues kind of pushed you away from it yesterday. Go back. I think I got the video in good condition. But here's what Pincus says to wrap it up. What did he get out of it? A few days reprieve for his coalition, during which he can persuade them that Trump proved he'll allow Israel to resume the war. Now, the reason that's so important is because Smotrich and the Israeli hardliners, they want to completely, quote, clean out Gaza. They want genocide. They want ethnic cleansing. They don't want the United States there. They don't want to rebuild it for Gazans, as he said, mostly, right? Didn't Trump say Palestinians mostly? That's not what they want. And according to Pincus, and it seems clear that this part is accurate, what did he get out of it? A few days to persuade them that Trump proved he'll allow Israel to resume the war. And did Trump do that? Nope. He said just the opposite. We want peace. He said just the opposite. He didn't blame Hamas and say, well, if we need Hamas to do this and we need the Palestinians to do that, and, it all came about because of October 7. I didn't say any of that. So I remain cautiously optimistic. I remain in a watch and wait position. I remain less miserable and unhappy about what's happening in Gaza than I was a few weeks ago. And I'll take it. Take that. Yeah, don't forget, click like, click subscribe. Hey, and don't forget, I'm going to put that GIF up. I'd love it if you, check it out. Want more? Join Halitics on Facebook. That's the best place you can communicate with me. And, I got kind of scolded on Facebook for being a little bit too hard on one of the posters there. And I feel bad about it. I was. I try to be really, really fair to everybody. I think what frustrates me is when there's a dialogue and people aren't presenting their own views and they're just regurgitating what they read somewhere else. You can say, well, that's what you just did, Hal. You just regurgitated what Alon Pincus wrote in Haaretz. But I don't think that's fair. I agree with the analysis, and the analysis was persuasive to me. But I set it out in very clear detail on why I find it persuasive. And I'm happy to debate that with you, with any of those points. I'm not just sort of throwing it out there, vomiting it up, and just saying, support this. 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. 240-242-5646. I wanted to, this was a really, really interesting little story that I noticed. That it has today's dateline, and this is VIN News, but it actually, I believe the story came out last night in Washington Examiner. I didn't use Washington Examiner for it. I probably should have, because that's the first. I think they broke it. But they have kind of a bad rep, for good or for evil. So I decided to go with VIN News. I didn't know what VIN News was, but I looked them up. And this is an Israeli newspaper. I'm not familiar with it. I assume they're pretty hard right. I don't know. Democrat Gregory Meeks pauses $1 billion arms sale to Israel amid Netanyahu's Washington visit. Now, the reason that really jumped out at me is one of the arguments that I found persuasive when listening to people debate whether one needed to vote for Kamala or whether you shouldn't vote for Kamala, right? You should vote for, as I did, Jill Stein. And again, this is not about whether, I think you vote for the best candidate who has a chance to win. And if there's no even decent candidate who has a chance to win, then you have to think outside the box. So there wasn't a decent candidate, in my view, who had a chance to win. I thought outside the box, and I voted for Jill Stein. I would have voted for her in any state. It didn't matter to me. So I don't want anyone trying to make excuses. Well, Hal was in a dark blue state, so it didn't matter. No, I would have voted for her if I was in Ohio or Pennsylvania or anywhere else. And I'll always say that because it's really important to me to make that point. One of the arguments I thought was persuasive was that Democrats actually, the pro-peace, to the extent there are any pro-peace Democrats, they're more likely to say no to Trump than they are to Biden. And if you read that headline, you see One of the more pro-peace Democrats is Gregory Meeks of New York, and I believe he's on a committee, I'm not sure which one, that has the ability to stop arms sales. And he did. He said, no, Israel doesn't need any more bombs. Israel doesn't need more arms right now. We'll pause it. Did he do that when Biden was president? Because again, the argument is one reason you might not vote for Harris is because Democrats are going to be much more reluctant. By the way, we saw this under W. There was a pretty strong pro-peace, there was a pretty active pro-peace Democratic community when W was president. And that community evaporated, Democratic community evaporated when Obama took office. And at first you could justify, well, he brought the troops back from Iraq, right? He ended that, but then he escalated in Afghanistan and he destroyed Libya and, you know, all the really bad stuff. There were more advisors in Syria. Although again, Biden was not Obama was not the worst. Not the worst when it comes to war. He simply wasn't. W was much worse, I believe. And Biden was much worse. But still, Obama was far from ideal either. And the Libya disaster will certainly haunt his legacy as it should. Gregory Meeks, under Biden, did hold up for a bit, or at least opposed an arms sale to Israel. And then under pressure from Biden, he backs the sale. So it looks like the argument, the point, well, maybe Democrats will find a little bit of a pro-peace spine, some of them, if Trump is the president. Seems like it. Seems like that wasn't a completely absurd take. I made the argument both last week, Friday, and also yesterday. Actually, I more listened to the argument from Adnan that Tulsi was a good choice, that she was maybe not perfect. She has been more pro-Israel than I would like. She has used some Islamophobic rhetoric, which I don't like, but that she's on balance pretty good. So on a pure partisan basis, the Republicans did back Tulsi as the next intelligence chief. And it's really, again, an indictment of the Democratic Party that not one Democrat supported her, given, as Adnan pointed out so articulately yesterday, that was the word I was having trouble with, so persuasively, so accurately, she's better than anything else we could hope for. It's certainly much better than Avril Haines. Tulsi is a patriot. Tulsi was a soldier. Tulsi does not have ties to the defense contracting industry, unlike Avril Haines. So this is a positive, and I'm glad of it. Not everyone agrees. So Shade does not, and I want to go through this because Shade is very bright, very thoughtful, makes strong arguments. I think he's wrong here. He can call in if he wants or post if he's listening or what have you, of course, and I'll entertain those views that he expresses, just as I'm doing so here. So in response to my point that she's a good choice, and I'm glad she got through the committee, Shade writes, look for our allies to be less cooperative in sharing intelligence, though this was likely to happen anyway due to the election of Potty Library Trump. Both present a clear danger to current ops. Well, we've heard this, but I haven't seen any evidence that any ops are in danger. That was the argument about Edward Snowden, right? That he put operatives in the field in danger. But there's been no evidence of that. It's never been presented. And if it had happened, if our intelligence operations were endangered in any way, the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the entire military-industrial complex would have been shouting that from the rooftops. They didn't do it. So I don't believe that to be true. But if you're talking about there being less cooperative and sharing intelligence, they don't want the American people to know. Well, I want to know. I want to know what the threats are. I want to know what the generals and the spies deem to be the problem and why they think it's a problem and why we need to be spending our money on these particular programs that they support, on buying this software, on purchasing that hardware. I think we should know about that. So I wrote back, okay, so and I said, and our allies are some of the worst people on the planet. So you mean allies like the genocidal Jewish state? Now, some would say that's sort of anti-Semitic, but Israel calls itself the Jewish state. So yeah, and they are genocidal. So the response is, to those of us who are not Jewish, the world does not revolve around Israel. So let me be real clear here. My concern about Israel as an ally is not because I'm Jewish. It is true that I feel a heightened duty as a Jew to say no to my co-religionists when they commit genocide. And I also feel a heightened duty as a Jew to fight against genocide, especially genocide that the United States is supporting. I will admit, I'm not as familiar with what's happening in Congo or Sudan, especially Congo, where apparently there have been many millions killed. So it's a horrible, horrible place. What's happening in Congo, especially. We're not as culpable. I'm sure we are culpable. I'm sure our Western corporations, multinationals, fighting for the resources in Central Africa have destabilized those countries, have empowered tyrants. I know we have. We should be doing what we can to stop it. I don't think we are. So it's true, there are other terrible places, and I don't talk about them as much as I should. But what Shea continues to say is, hey, we have to worry about Russia and China. And the bottom line is, I'm not really worried about Russia at all. I have some concerns about China, for sure. But I wrote back, are you really? And I don't understand these fears of Russia. How can you be scared of Russia? They lost 1 million troops in Ukraine, and they still can't conquer it. Where is this fear of Russia coming from? What has Russia done that makes you think they pose some grave threat to our interests? It's a small country. Their population is imploding. They have, I believe, negative population growth. They're losing their empire. Why would you be afraid of them? I don't understand that. China's a different story. China's at 1.5 billion people. They do have a large military, not nearly as powerful or large as ours, but they do. We built their economy up. That powerful manufacturing base that they have, their tech advances, AI advances, I think do pose concerns. Trump's taking them on. Hey, those tariffs, that's terrible for China. Nothing could be worse for China. If we stop purchasing their surplus, that's going to really hurt China economically. And if you don't have money, you can't buy battleships. You can't buy carriers. You can't build a huge military. So they're not threats in my view. What is a threat is us. We're the hegemon. We're the ones who cause so much destabilization, harm, death, destruction. We've spread it everywhere for the past, since 1945? 79 years, 80 years we've been making trouble. Sounds like Tulsi doesn't want us to make so much trouble anymore. I like that. All right, 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. 240-242-5646. one of my, I never like the expression pet peeve. I don't know why. I just don't like the way it sounds. But I have been quite critical of my former employer. You know, you could say, well, it's sour grapes. It didn't work out there. You didn't, whatever. You didn't make it. You didn't get promoted or whatever. I sort of got, it's got nothing to do with it. My problem with our revolution is that I don't believe they're progressive. I believe they exist at this point to fund themselves, to maintain as an organization, not to bring about progressive ends. And I don't think that's the whole story. I think they persuaded themselves that supporting the Democratic Party is the way to go. But I also think that it's very self-serving to say that, because they get support from the Democratic Party, at least from insiders in the Democratic Party. They get the Democratic electeds on their phone calls. They can raise money to help elect Democrats. And I think they would lose a lot of that if they did what is right, if they took on the real battle, which is both parties, which is the monstrous actions that both parties are responsible for. So I have a huge problem with that. And I saw this as just blatant chutzpah. We helped elect Ken Martin as the new chair. We beat back the Democratic establishment. This is their email, their victory lap. Ken Martin. They beat the establishment that didn't want Ken Martin, except what about Jim Clyburn? Is there a more establishment Dem than Jim Clyburn? This is the guy who torpedoed Bernie twice, who absolutely did the bidding of Obama, Biden, Pelosi. And he supported Ken Martin. This is a guy who stood against Medicare for all, who's done nothing for his impoverished black and brown constituents. Jim Clyburn's guy is the same guy that our revolution is now taking a victory lap for allegedly helping elect. And why is our revolution doing that? Well, right there, I don't think it takes any, you can figure it out just as easily. You don't need to have me show this, but this is why. It's in that email. It's right there. Give us money so we can keep electing the Ken Martins. It's really, really, really unfortunate. It's really, really, really bad. And, we've got to figure something else out, because this kind of backing elite Democratic leaders has been a complete failure. And look at what it's led to. It's led to a situation where Trump is better on war and peace issues. That's where we are right now. So this is from CBS News. Ken Martin, the one that our revolution is so proud of having elected. This is from CBS News. There were 6 candidates, including Faz Shakir. Now, I played a clip of Faz Shakir saying that what the Democratic Party needs to do is have football parties. I don't really think that's the answer, but okay. Shakir worked for Bernie Sanders. If our revolution really was walking the walk, don't you think they would have been all in for Faz Shakir? Our revolution was, and they often talk about how they're the successor to the Bernie Sanders 2016 campaign, that Bernie Sanders staffers, and it's true, it's definitely true. Jeff Weaver, who's pretty much of a corporatist now, but he was a Bernie Sanders staffer, and Larry Cohen, from Communication Workers of America, CWA, right? I was struggling to get that acronym. And of course, Nina Turner. They started it, or they were there almost at the very beginning. So if you're part of the Bernie movement, why would you take credit or claim a victory lap when you helped allegedly put Jim Clyburn's guy at the top of the Democratic Party? Well, you do it because you want to claim victory for something and you want to raise money. That's all. I thought it was really interesting. Actually, I'll put this back up for a second. They mentioned 6 candidates. This is kind of an interesting article from CBS. There's a lot to it. We'll go through some of it and talking about and this was over the weekend, so this is fresh news. This isn't some old school stuff. We talked about this on Monday with Arlen and Fred. So 6 candidates. Now, you'd think they name all 6, because it's not like that's like 20. It's sort of like, in Gilligan's Island, the first version, they mentioned 7, I guess, 5 passengers that sailed that day for 3. So there are 5 passengers plus the skipper and Gilligan. So that's 7, right? And they named 5 in the first version, and they say, and the rest. It's not like there were 10 other people. There were 2 other people. You could name them. They do unless the Professor and Mary Ann. So that's how they do it. But you'd think if there are 6 candidates and you identify 5, wouldn't you just say all 6? Why do you leave one out? So the 6 candidates that they identify, they say there were 6, then they named 5. O'Malley from Maryland, Marin O'Malley, which is interesting. He got nothing, or very little. So we got a few votes, very little support. Ben Wickler, who was one of the co-favorites along with Ken Martin from, respectively, the northern tier there, first Wisconsin for Wickler, then Martin, both Minnesota, both the chairs of their state parties. Then Faz Shakir, right? So if I count right, that's only 4, right? Wickler, Martin, Shakir, and O'Malley. So I don't know who I know one of the other 2. I thought they were going to name 5. One of the other 2 is Marianne Williamson. She doesn't even rate a mention. Isn't that interesting? You would have thought she would have rated a mention. She did run against Biden. She doesn't even rate a mention. Quite astonishing. So this is not even that important. It's important. I don't want to say it's not important at all. But the CBS News story does give you, I think, accurately describes the position. The one that Ken Martin took over, and the one that our revolution is apparently real happy about because they say they beat back the establishment. So the DNC chair is primarily technical and behind the scenes. I agree. They help raise money for the party, manage the party's top-level infrastructure, and organize coordinated efforts among the various parties. It's all true. And this race was primarily focused on how the party should react to widespread losses in 24 of key voting blocks, especially working-class voters. All true. There's no question. That's accurate. The working class voters is so key. It's a technical position, but you're the leader of the party nationally. You're the titular head. You don't have a president. You don't have any clear party leader, right? There's no one that you clearly can identify as someone who the party can rally. In 2016, I think we could have said, although we couldn't because the party rejected him, but Bernie Sanders should have been the leader of the Democrat Party. He should have been embraced. He came in a remarkably close second, given the odds against him when he started in 2015 against Hillary. Remarkably close, more popular than Hillary, the most popular politician in America. He should have been the head. He just wasn't because his positions weren't popular among the elites, but they were certainly popular among the rank and file. So the question then you have to ask is there anyone who could be a Bernie? And there's no one. There's no one in the Democratic Party who's remotely as popular as Bernie was in 2016. Nobody who has the kind of influence or who could be perceived as somebody who could take on and defeat Trump. There's no one. Gavin Newsom, give me a break. So if the job of the DNC chair at this time is to figure out how do we get those voters back, then you'd think Ken Martin would have set out a roadmap, right? Now, Faz Shakir's idea is let's have parties, Super Bowl watch parties. I don't think that's going to do it. But he does have an idea. Does Ken Martin have any ideas? Well, not that I could glean from this article or from other online searches. I saw nothing where Ken Martin said, this is what we need to do to win. He says we need to go on offense. He says we need to unite, but there's no roadmap. There's no specifics. He's very good at criticizing Trump. But as we've been over this before ad nauseum, attacking Trump doesn't win you elections. I guess it kind of did in 2020. Although I think that was more likely COVID than anything else. But attacking Trump isn't how you win. You have to have a bold vision, which Trump sort of kind of has, to make life better for the American people. And what does Ken Martin do? He attacks Trump. He's invited all these billionaires in the Oval Office to mine, extract, and profit off of our government. Okay, I don't think that's untrue. Although, to his credit, to Trump's credit, he doesn't view foreign policy as necessarily an area that should be turned over to military contractors the way Biden did. But yeah, we do want to get the billionaire influence out of politics, right? That's really important. But Martin gives you zero roadmap as to how he plans to do that. I Googled Ken Martin Medicare for All because nothing would be more effective at persuading working class voters, some of them to join the Democratic Party, than guaranteeing health care for all. He doesn't ever mention it. He doesn't talk about it. This is an issue that the Democrat Party doesn't talk about. Does he have a plan for bringing jobs back to this country? I haven't heard it. I looked for it. I didn't find it. In fact, that was a huge failing on Kamala's part. So this new chair, whose job, one, is to find ways to bring the working class back into the Democratic Party fold, has no ideas for doing so. And that's who our revolution brags about helping elect. Can't make this stuff up. Just can't make it up, man. Just so astonishing to me that this is what we're seeing. All right, I had one more story. Let me just quickly. I actually kind of like this story. Unfortunately, I missed one of my two slides that I wanted to put there, but I think this is I think this is a positive. Some of you may disagree. NFL will remove end racism from the end zones ahead of Super Bowl. Apparently, and they showed a picture on the story of the end racisms on either end racisms, in plural, because there's one on either side of the field, each of the end zones, that, Trump doesn't like that. It's too woke. It's DEI. It's this or that. Instead, now they're going to put choose love. I completely support that. A statement like end racism, what does that even mean? How do you do that? That's part of who we are, right? That's human nature, is you are suspicious of those who are different. It's just the way it is. I have a plan for reducing greatly the impact of racism. We guarantee everyone has enough and no one has too much. That's incredibly important. Won't completely solve the problem, and we have to do more, but that's the first and most effective way to do it. But it's still like, what does that even mean? How do I end racism? How do I do that? I don't know. But choosing love, I get that. When I'm with somebody, maybe if they say something, I look in my own life. Someone says something I don't like, I'm going to really, really try. I don't always succeed, but I'm going to try to choose love, not to hate, not to be angry, not to be bitter, but to say, okay, they're humans. They deserve forgiveness. They deserve love. Everyone. The people of Gaza deserve love, caring, peace. So I am totally good with choosing love. And I'm glad that the NFL is making that the slogan. I mean, I know it's performative and it's kind of meaningless, but still, I want to see that. I want to see choose love. I want to have be the thought in my mind is to choose love. And with that, I'm going to wish you all a great rest of your day. I will be back tomorrow, Thursday. We have some really good guests for next week, or at least one really. Well, we have two because we'll have Arlen, and he's always good. And then we'll have Andy Ellis from the Green Party to talk as well about his campaign to be the next Maryland state governor. Have a great afternoon. Thank you for your time.